Hey everyone. I was inspired when I saw this beautiful laser cut vase, and it looks like it's symmetrical around a central axis. It uses these slices of laser cut wood, and they're all from sheet flat material, and it creates this beautiful 3D form. So this Instructable is for Onshape, and I'd like to give it a try in Fusion. So I'm basing what we're doing here today off of this technique. We're going to be using something called the revolve pattern and the revolve tool and a circular pattern to create those flat slices and spin them around an axis. Okay, so my example looks like this. I've got about 15 pieces here that I created, and I've got a top piece and a bottom piece, and all of those pieces are joined together. Let's have a look at how they're joined together. They use this half lap intersecting joint. And if I take this top piece and hide it, we can see that each of those pieces has got a cutout. And importantly, on this top circle, there's a cutout for each piece as well. So it wouldn't be enough just to do a slot on the one piece and not the other, because the position wouldn't be guaranteed for both pieces. So we need both pieces to fit well together. And of course, we've got that connection also on the bottom piece with the bottom slats as well. There we go. So if we were to manufacture this with laser cutting as an example, then it would be really easy to put it together exactly as it was intended and as exactly as it was designed. So let's start a new file. And I'm going to set up a parameter first. I'm going to press S, and I'm going to change parameters. And really I need two parameters here. One parameter I need is the material thickness, because that parameter is essential to making these pieces fit together well. For now, I'm going to use exactly the material thickness, which would be 2.8 millimeters in my case. But I'm going to think, if I have it exactly the material thickness, even considering for what the laser cutter will delete, I still think that's too tight. So I'm going to round it to 3 millimeters. So this will be as per the material, plus a little bit of tolerance. Okay, so a 3 millimeter material will work well. And I need to know how many copies around the central axis I want. And so for that, I need a parameter with no units, okay? Because it's just a number, so we'll just call this the count. And the expression to start with, well, we'll see what 15 looks like, okay? So with those parameters in mind, I'm going to start creating my sketch. I'm going to make a new sketch on the front plane. And keeping my origin as the center point, the center axis, or this green axis here can be my central axis. I'm going to think about what my part that is going to be repeated looks like. And in this example, it's the section of my design like this. So what do I want this to be? And that depends on if I wanted it to be a vase or a lampshade, a holder, or an abstract sculpture of some sort. So I'm going to use an abstract geometric approach. Okay, I'm not going to start on the origin, because the origin is the central axis through the entire thing. I'm going to start away from the origin, and this is going to be where the bottom of my first section starts. And that size I'm probably going to define, because I want to know exactly what that internal size is going to be. And then this width as well, to really give me a sense of scale here. To have something 50 millimeters will work well for what I'm envisioning. And then for the internal size, I can do that by the grid. I can do it by eye because I have a line here that's 50, or I can just commit to 15 millimeters there. And that's what I'll do. Okay. And now I'm going to go up, and I'm going to sort of roughly plan how far I'm going to go up. In fact, to do that, why don't I just pop in a line from the center axis that's vertical to the axis here. And this is just a sketch line, so I clicked on it and pressed X to make it a construction line. And then I'm going to give it a height of something that will help me envision what is the height that I want for my product. I'll say 150 millimeters. There we go. So now I know how far I am from the center, how wide my bottom piece is, and how tall the overall shape will be. Now I can proceed with making my design for my section. Here I'm drawn to the idea of an abstract, jagged shape. Maybe it gets more jagged as it goes. Who knows? Here I'm just hovering over my mouse cursor so that I stay in line with this target height that I set. And then I'm going to do a similar thing on the way back. I could, of course, incorporate other tools. I could use an offset here to capture exactly the size, or I could just proceed with an abstract approach and see how it goes. And today I'm feeling like seeing how it goes. This is giving me like Pikachu tail vibes here. Let's see what happens. Maybe lightning, maybe thunder. All right, and I'll just connect it to my bottom side. Now your section might look different. You can trial this with any kind of section you like. Before we proceed, we need to plan where the cutouts are going to be for the central circles, and let me show you in this way. So these support circles here will also be cut from the same sheet material. So let's plan where they're going to go. I'm going to make 2, and the cross section of that circle is a rectangle. So I grab the rectangle, and I can either connect it to the central axis and not have a hole cut out at all, or I can give it some space. And for this design, I'll give it some space. And I'm not starting from the very bottom either, because I want it to intersect with this piece. I don't want it to form the complete bottom surface. The height of this rectangle should also be the material thickness. Okay? And then the distance here can be somewhat arbitrary, keeping in mind the relative size and scale of the rest of the design. Okay? So I'm planning for this bottom support circle to intersect roughly by this amount. And the overall circle is going to be this size. But there's really one more thing I need to consider here, which is because they both are going to intersect each other, I'll show you with my previous example. Here we go. In my previous example, this rectangle forms the entire circle, but this part here is the part where they actually are going to intersect. So I'm going to draw a line from this rectangle on my working one so that I can plan to create this intersection. Okay. One thing is it will be a little bit easier if I trim off this part so that I have my whole rectangle here. And that'll just make selection of the profiles more straightforward. So now I've got my whole rectangle. And now I'm going to plan where the actual intersection of these pieces go, which will be, in this case, roughly halfway between the edge and the end of my circle shape here. This is perpendicular, so I know that it is straight. Okay, I'm going to do the same technique for my other support circle. Where this goes exactly is really up to you. Where it is in reference to the central axis is also up to you, but better that you understand the technique first and then experiment with that a little bit. I'm thinking it would look good if it was actually in line with this sort of jagged edge here. So remember that this represents the material thickness. There we go. And how convenient is it that I had a parameter there so I don't have to worry about remembering what that is and typing it every time. And I can change it all later. Okay, so I can move this around a little bit, and I'm happy with it. So I'm going to also create a line here so that I can represent where is it being intersected. Now in this case, my line is not straight here, it's not automatically perpendicular, so I can fix that using the vertical constraint. Okay. The next step is to finish the sketch, and we're going to start to do an extrusion on this first piece, and we're going to create our parts. The first thing I want to create is one copy of my section. I'm going to E for extrude. And then I'm going to very carefully here select the profiles that I want. Now this part here is going to include the first cutout of our rectangle. Okay, and you can see I didn't trim this away, but this will work out. I won't go back and trim it for the video. We'll do it both ways. So this includes that first part, and then this also includes that first part. All right. Now, the extrusion window here, I need to pay attention to the direction, and I'm going to make it symmetric, okay? The distance is the material thickness, and then the measurement is the whole length. What we're saying is that the sketch plane is in the middle. You can see that it's in the middle. And then symmetrically, we're going either side and we're measuring it by the whole length. If I was to do it one side or the other, then that would just change the alignment of my rotation. It still works out, but this really is the most representative way to do it. And that way the circle intersects perfectly with this section. Okay, so I'll leave that there, and I'm ready to create also my lower portion and my upper portion. Okay. The lower portion and upper portion, they come from a revolute command, or revolve. If I was to revolve just this part, using the axis as the center, then you can see that my intended cutout section is not included there. So this is why we created that geometry. It's very important. So I'm going to include in this profile also this section here. Here I'm not able to select it at the moment, so I should be able to select it by long pressing and selecting it there, and then also including it in this section. Now, if that's not working, what we can then do is close the revolve tool. Why don't we just select it first? There we go, holding shift. Now the whole thing is selected. There we go, now we get the part. But the operation here is not cut, it's a new body. We want to make that a new body, okay? Making sure that your angle is the full amount, or we can change this to the full extent, okay? So there we go. We learned that we had to select all the profiles first. I'll go up, look at this sketch, and I'll do the same thing. I'll long press to be able to select this profile, and holding shift, I'll press the rest. We'll revolve this around the central axis, and we'll make it a new body. The thickness is already the material thickness because we already configured that with the rectangle. Okay. Now if we open the bodies folder, we can triple check that we haven't erroneously joined them when we did the extrude or revolve commands, because we need these to be separate for the next parts. Okay. Now we have just the step of revolving it around the central axis, this piece, and then cutting everything so that they actually intersect properly with this top and bottom circle. So we'll use the circular pattern tool, and then we're going to pattern a body as a circle, this body around the central axis we made. There we go. And then this we set up a parameter for called count. Okay. Now we can hit OK, and we get our wonderful pieces. There we go. Very jagged, very sharp. We need to create the intersection of these sections with the top and bottom circle. So let's do that by using the combine tool. The combine tool does several operations. Here we're really more like cutting it, okay? It's a type of Boolean operation. We're targeting the top circle. The tool is each one of these. There we go. If it becomes tricky to select them, we can just select them from the window. Okay, that is all of them. This last body that's not selected is the lower circle. That's not involved in this cut operation. The operation is a cut, and we're keeping the tools because we don't want these bodies to disappear. Okay, so let's check and make sure that worked. If I take any of the bodies and I hide it, I should see that this intersection works, as does this one. So both of them are cut equally and evenly. Last but not least, we can combine, target, the thing we're doing, or the thing we're changing, tools, what we're using to change it, checking the operations cutting, and we're keeping them. There we go. And with that, we've got our completed rotational symmetry intersecting slice vase, lampshade, or other prototype. So, some bonus tips on what to do now that you've completed the rotational symmetry. If we enable our original sketch that we used to create the section, we should be able to, even without editing the sketch, make some little tweaks about the size and shape. So if we find the rectangle that drives our bottom circle, one thing we can do is move it up and down, and we just have to be careful to still maintain our original set of features, which is maintaining both sides of this rectangle. But what this line does is it would actually change. There we go, you can see it like this. It would actually change where this cutout is, so how deep it is and where it begins, as well as the height and the overall size of the circle. Now if we go too far to extend it, I'll go even farther, that really changes what our original pattern was, so that doesn't quite work in this approach. But we can leave that one, and we can make some visual decisions about whether or not, it was better with it smaller, with a hole that's really small. If I go too far, again, that breaks the revolution pattern, so I can edit that in the sketch so that it's perfectly aligned, and I could even get rid of the central hole if I wanted to bring that all the way. Okay, so that's one thing we can do. We can do the same thing, of course, with the upper geometry as well. Looking at that quickly, make it bigger. We can change where the slot cutout is, like that. And then also, in real time, we can change the position of the section. We can change the position of the points. And since we're not really changing this profile, this can all happen dynamically. We can make bigger changes as well if we go back to edit the sketch specifically, but we can definitely make these little tugs and tweaks without changing the original profile reference in the timeline. So we can make these changes, and we can look back and say, ah, yes, that looks better, or no, I really wanted it to be really pointy and really crazy, and I really wanted to see what I could do with this kind of technique. And so you can really change it up. And maybe we wanted to make it more like Christmas tree oriented. Here this bottom dimension is set, so then that means going back into the sketch and editing things. Now that I have the scale, maybe I'll just delete that bottom size, because that was helping me just understand how big things really were. And I'll start to bring this out, and I'll bring this one in a little bit. I can bring this one in even more. It would help if I looked at this profile like this, orthographically, and then maybe I want to bring that up a little bit. And boy, now I really want to go back into the sketch and make this pointed, and then we sort of have a tree shape. So I encourage you to explore what it looks like to edit these final shapes as well.